Hello everyone, welcome back to this another lecture on AWS IAM. So what does AWS IAM means? AWS IAM mean abbreviated for Identity and Access Management. So it helps us to provide access management for AWS services. Let's say someone wants to use the AWS services in your particular account, right? So you can create a user or even one of the AWS services which you are using. Let's assume like you might not understand what is an EC2. EC2 is nothing but a server, which we will cover later for understanding, right? Let's say your EC2 instance, right, wants to talk to some other AWS services. It can be an S3 bucket or something, right? It require accesses. So for providing those sort of access, right, we'll also be using IAM. So IAM is basically used for providing access to AWS services and also to users who want to access the AWS services in your account. Next up, we do have a thing called IAM policies. So IAM policies is the one which defines who can access and what can be accessed. Let's say like a person, right? Like user foobar or user allies, right? If he wants to access AWS, right, we can define only he can access that thing. So what are the resources that he can access? Those kind of restrictions, right? Let's say he want to access A or B. So those kind of restrictions, right? We can define within IAM. So what's basically a IAM user is then? So IAM user is nothing but just an entity which holds the user and their credentials. So whatever the policies which we created previously, right, those policies we will be attaching to the users so that this particular user, right, can only perform those actions and he cannot perform anything higher than that. Let's say you have an organization and you want to manage multiple users at a time. So attaching a policy to each user one by one, right, it's a tedious process and hard to manage, right? That's where IAM group comes in. So what you can do is like you can group users into a single bucket and you can attach policy to that particular bucket. Let's assume like you have a development team of 10 people. You can group all the 10 people, 10 users into that developer IAM group and assign that particular relevant IAM policy for that group. So that right, it will be easy to manage the policies for that particular group. Next up roles, IAM roles. So IAM roles is for the AWS services. So let's take the other case which we discussed, right? EC2 instance or even a VPC or any other AWS services, right? Wants to access other AWS resources, let's say S3 by EC2 instance wants to connect to S3 bucket or EC2 instance wants to query something out of a database or something right within AWS. That's where we will be using IAM roles. So IAM roles, right, will also make use of IAM policies. The IAM policies which we create, right, it will be assigned to the IAM roles so that right what can be performed by that service against other resources, right, will be defined within IAM policies. I hope you understand about AWS IAM and the other functionalities within IAM. So there is no additional cost for IAM as well. That's one other important thing, good thing to know.